All right, everybody, thanks for joining us again for Scar Stories. This is episode 3, and I am so excited about this episode. Literally say that about every episode, but you guys actually get a chance to meet my counselor, Kevin. I think you all know him by his first name because I talk so much about him. And Kevin, so many people are like, I need to see Kevin. Can I see Kevin? And I'm like, he is fully booked, but I send a lot of people to your office, like Mike and Lydia and stuff. So you've become a little bit of a household name at Centerpoint. But anyway, so this is Dr. Kevin Hull, and I'm going to let him talk a little bit about himself first, and then we're going to get right into these questions. And I'm pretty excited about this because we're, obviously everybody knows we're living in some very tumultuous times. And if I had $1 for everyone who's come up to me and said, like, I just have this pervading angst that I'm living with, and I don't know what to do about it. And so that's what Kevin and I are going to have a conversation about is, where is this pervading angst coming from? And then what the heck do we do with it? So, but before we get into that, Kevin, I want you to tell everybody a little bit about who you are. So you have your hands in all sorts of things. So you are an author, you've written several books. And you want to tell us a little bit about some of the books that you've written?
Sure. One of the spin-offs of my career as a counselor was writing. And so I've had the opportunity to write some books. They're mainly around the autism spectrum, play therapy, and that type of topic, helping parents.
Yeah.
I'm big on relationships. So
yes,
parents connecting. And then I've written a lot of chapters for textbooks. I'm also a full-time professor for Liberty University.
Yes.
So
that's awesome.
Along with that is some writing projects and also teaching. So
yeah,
in addition to having my counseling practice, those are some of the other things that I do. My wife and I, Wendy, we're in a blended family. So we have the whole blended family dynamic. All of our kids are now functioning adults. So that's a great feeling.
Yeah.
And then for fun, I like to swim. I'm an open water swimmer, so I'm one of those, crazy people that goes out with the sharks and stingrays and jellyfish.
Oh my gosh. No.
I swim with a group though.
Okay.
So if
I didn't realize that. I thought originally you were just going to the gym to swim. So now, has this been a new thing you've started?
That's how it started. It started as just 4 or 5 years ago. I jumped in the pool at the Y. I was tired of getting beat up playing pickup basketball. And so I just started swimming and enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was really good meditation time and prayer time. And so then I found an open water swim group over at Anna Maria, and a guy by the name of Gary Fenimore over there has that group. And so
that is cool.
This became something that I really liked and found other people that liked it. And so
and Wendy's okay with this? This doesn't make her nervous?
No, it's all in God's hands.
Okay.
So yeah.
I love it. I love it. See, I have nightmares about open deep water. We probably never talked about that before. So like that would scare the crap out of me. Or I'd be like the fastest swimmer there. Like get it done.
Yeah.
So that is great. And then I don't even know if I know this. How long have you had your practice?
Well, the practice that I'm a part of, I joined back in 2000. So a lady named Linda Compton owned it at that time, and I joined her. And so I've been there 20 years. But in I think 07, 08, I became the owner. So but yeah, and then so yeah. Time flies. I've been a professor for 17 years. Which blows my mind. And, so yeah, I do a lot of stuff. And enjoy every part of it.
That's so cool. So I started seeing you back in 2010, which is crazy to me because I've been seeing you for over 10 years. Which whenever I talk to anyone about counseling, like that is one of the things I say is like, find someone that you can track with for the long haul. A lot of times people start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, and they can't make any traction. And I feel like real healing comes when you can make traction with someone who really gets to know you, can figure out your triggers, can help you process. And so I honestly think that's the coolest thing, that I've been seeing you for 10 years. And then Bryant will randomly come in with me every once in a while when we need a little tune up or something, or when I'm like, yo, babe, you need help processing this, go see Kevin. So, but I think that's awesome that I've been seeing you for 10 years. So, all right, well, let's dive right in. So the first question, I sent you some of these too. And it's what I opened up the session with, that I have a lot of people tell me they just feel an angst almost all the time. A lot of them say it's anxiety. Some say they just have a feeling something's wrong. I've had one person tell me they just feel this pervading doom. And so do you think this has anything to do with how our brains are processing the stress of COVID? What is this, all this? And I was doing some research last night, and the statistics are staggering. Obviously, the news is all over the place. So this is what I read. You're actually in the business. You're actually in the middle of it. So you can correct me if I'm wrong. But what I read is that suicide rates, substance abuse, mental illness, all of these things, there's been a drastic increase since the start of the pandemic. And so I guess like my first question, and it's hugely open-ended. So, but you're a counselor, so you're good at taking open-ended things and making it fit. But like, where is this pervading angst coming from? Why are we feeling like we are falling apart at the seams and something's terribly wrong that we can't figure out what it is and we can't fix it?
Well, it's a brain thing. And
Okay.
we get our sense of safety from familiarity, predictability, and the overall sense of control of our environment and other people that we know.
Yeah.
So the theme in the last few months, well, since March, is the unknown, unpredictability, unfamiliar territory. And so what happens is we become reactive in an effort to maintain control and get back control. So the reason understanding the brain, the sympathetic nervous system, an easy way to think of it is the fight or flight response when we sense we're in danger. And it's like driving a car. Your car, if you need to punch the gas to merge with traffic when you're getting on the interstate, it can do that.
Yeah.
But if you drive all the time with the pedal down, there's going to be problems. And it's not going to be good for you or anyone else. And so what we've done in our culture is we are literally pushing the pedal to the metal in our busyness and in our efforts to, while technology is great, it's given us less time and space for just relaxing, to just be. So when COVID hit, all of us were thrown upside down and all around. We couldn't go to our favorite places, church, restaurants, the gym, these familiar spaces. They shut down our parks. Wendy and I
shut
have
down
this
Disney. I was like, COVID is bad. They shut down Disney.
And as a sports fan, when the Final Four is canceled, it's getting serious. And so Wendy and I have this beautiful park where we love to walk, and that was taken away. And so the reason it's important to understand the brain is because people often blame themselves. We are a culture that has a stigma about seeing mental health and feelings as weakness. And so there's this pervasive attitude in our culture of pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And so for folks who suffer emotionally from depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsiveness, there's a blaming of themselves and seeing themselves as weak and stupid and just incompetent. But when we understand what our brain needs and how it reacts if we sense we're in danger, then we can create distance from, wait a minute, I'm not flawed. I'm not a bad person. I'm not cursed. This is my brain reacting to what it's being told and what situations I'm in. So that provides a nice foundation for parents out there this is the first step in not being reactive towards your kid. You know, your 2-year-old who's melting down because they didn't get a cookie.
Yeah.
To that brain, that's life and death. I'm going to die if I don't get my cookie.
Yes.
If we take it personal, then I either want to run away from my kid or I want to make them stop.
Yeah.
And that's where we get into trouble as parents, because then we make ultimatums, we give them punishments we can't enforce, and then we're just general trolls with our kids, just blah. And so understanding that brain piece helps us step back and go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's a brain reaction, unfamiliar territory, not feeling like we're in control. And then, you know, Aldous Huxley wrote that great book, Brave New World.
Mm-hmm.
And one of his fears that he had about technology was that people would become their own little God.
Yep.
And no one would know what the truth was, and no one would care.
Mm-hmm.
And so where we are with, I mean, look at how in 5 minutes on my computer, I can pull up 100 doctors who say the answer to this is to let it run.
Yeah.
Herd immunity, let those who are going to get it be sick, keep those who are at risk away, but open things up.
Yeah.
And then I can find another 100 doctors who say, keep things shut down.
Yes.
Do not go outside, do not go to sporting events, you know. And so all of us are sitting here going, wait a minute, that guy's from Harvard Medical.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, that guy's from Harvard Medical. They disagree. Like, who's right, who's wrong? So what that does is it makes us feel unsafe. So our brain's natural reaction to danger and feeling unsafe is to either shut down or react.
Yeah.
And so this is where a lot of the self-soothing comes in.
Okay.
And again, this is another people feel guilty about. They feel that they're weak.
Yeah.
Overeating, pornography, all of these things that we try to quell the problem.
Yep.
And this overload of fear has these, you know, results. And so that's another reason why people feel terrible, is I don't have any control. And then what I have tried is completely ineffective. And then that leads to despondency. The other thing that we hinge our sense of safety on is predictability of the future.
Yep.
So we live in an age of so much information. We don't know what's true, what isn't. We don't know. Like, this looming election has people losing their minds as if, you know, if Trump is elected, the world's going to end. And if Biden is elected, the world's going to end.
Yeah.
And, you know, they lose their perspective of history. They lose their perspective of safety.
Yeah.
And so our brain really works hard to try to keep us safe, because that's where we function best. But where we're at our worst is when we're pulled from the moment. This present moment is all we have.
Yeah.
You and I are sharing this moment. For everybody listening, just imagine where you are in this moment. Chances are you're probably safe.
Yeah.
But we've lost the ability in our culture to determine what is a real threat and what's an imaginary threat.
Wow. Yeah.
So the new tiger in the grass is deadlines, bills, schedules, getting my kid in the right school.
Yeah.
Keeping them safe. Oh my gosh. You know, there's a whole other layer with COVID of, you know, at first we were told kids are fine.
Yeah.
They don't get it. Well, then a kid tests positive. Well, now what?
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
And I've known people who've gotten it. They had the sniffles. They felt a little run down for a few days, maybe like a sinus infection. And then other people have been hospitalized. So again, the unknown. You'll notice the scariest movies that you've ever seen are the ones that have that unnamed, unknown dread or doom.
Yes.
Those are the themes that really scare people.
Yeah. So interesting. And I think too, like, as you're talking about it, you know, I had wondered that. I had wondered with how busy and driven our culture is, and then all of a sudden to just halt. And so now everything we've been running from, by trying to keep ourselves busy, everything we've been trying to distract, now we're just alone with our thoughts. Then you couple into that what you just said, like that we don't feel safe and we don't know how to keep our kids safe. And it's so funny because even right now, our kids, for a lot of us, some people are keeping their kids home for e-learning. We sent our kids back. And within the first couple of weeks, your kids start having the sniffles or something, which is so normal. That's what happens the first couple of weeks of school. And then you couple on that, like they've not been around anyone else for 7 months. But then it's like, okay, do they have COVID? Do I take them in? Do I get them tested? What do I do? And it's just this, anytime someone sneezes or coughs. I mean, I had a friend tell me the other day, she had a cough. She was in a restaurant. She held her cough in, excused herself from the table, went outside as far away as she could get from people, coughed, and then came back in because she did not want everyone staring at her and panicking. And I'm like, what is wrong with us? But I think all of that, and then coupled with the fact that so many of us have had to learn new things. And you and I talked about this in a session. And I wonder if you could just explain this again too, because I think this is fascinating. Like we've had to learn so many new things. So some people, I've had a lot of friends who have gotten new jobs. I've had a lot of friends who have had to learn how to handle working from home and homeschooling. So they've had to learn. And with this whole e-learning thing, I mean, there are like, you are lucky your kids are, launching out on their own, because e-learning, we were forced to do it from March until May. And there's like 5 different platforms you have to be on. And the teachers are communicating with you in all these different ways. So you had to learn all this new technology. We've had to learn how to go out in public and what to do when. And I mean, it's just crazy. So I guess explain what you did to me about how the brain processes new information. And so I just feel like our brains are those little emojis where they're about to explode because they're doing so much. It's trying to keep us safe. Then it's trying to learn new stuff. I mean, bless our brain's heart. But what happens when it's trying to learn new things? Can you explain that to us? Because I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I like the picture of the emoji that's about to explode. The theme is the demands outweigh the resources. That's really the definition of stress.
Yeah.
Is
I like that.
The demands outweigh the resources. So what you have is some components of the brain that are part of learning. And for those of you that are parents, this is a great conceptualization for you to remember, when it just seems like your kid isn't getting something.
Yeah.
You reacting angrily or emotionally is one of the worst things you can do. So the left side of our brain is the analytical, planning, organizational side. The right side of our brain is the creative side. That's the side that, lights up when we're doing something we enjoy, that's, music-based.
Yeah.
That's why music is so soothing for people, because you zone out.
Yeah.
When you're watching a movie and you're, the visual stimulants and the sounds and all that stuff, it's a nice respite from the part of our brain that's analyzing and planning and working.
Yeah.
And then the front part of our brain is the logic center. That's the part that interprets the emotions of others. It looks at what's going on in the environment, and then it's a problem-solving center.
Okay.
The back part of the brain, near the lower brainstem, that's the danger center. That's the reactive brain when we're under attack or in danger. And when that is activated, that shuts down everything else. So memory doesn't work, logic and reasoning doesn't work. And think about it, in survival mode.
Yeah.
If I'm admiring the beautiful fur of the tiger and look how pretty his teeth are.
Yeah.
If I don't act quickly, I'm doomed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, back to the threat thing. So new information at first, when we don't process it, we don't have anywhere to put it in our brain.
Yeah.
It triggers that expansive fight or flight response.
Interesting.
In fact, there's even one of the reasons why the Greeks, when they taught, they intertwined physical activity with learning.
Okay.
Is because there's a theme that learning is suffering. So there's a part of suffering when we learn something new. It's frustrating. It's, and I say this to my students all the time. that when you feel this frustration, recognize it.
Yeah.
Don't react. Just, take a break, give it some space.
Yeah.
So that part is happening when we're trying to process something new.
Okay.
And this is, a phrase you'll hear a lot is make a new normal.
Yeah.
Well, that takes a while. It takes about 30 days to break a habit, about 21 days to make a new habit. And all the while we're doing that, our brain is craving some kind of familiarity.
Yeah.
So that's why quitting something cold turkey, diets that call upon you to just, okay, you can't eat Reese's peanut butter cups ever again.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you
I
can't
would
have
die.
a banana.
Yeah.
Those diets tend to fail really quickly. The ones that do well are the ones that take a little bit of what you were eating before, introduce a little bit of new stuff, and then create a space where you gradually lessen your portions. Gradual is best because we need all parts of our brain to function. We need the left side for planning and organization. We need the right side to have a little fun.
Yeah.
And we need our frontal lobes to kind of put it all together and make a new narrative of what the new normal will be. And so if we enter into the fight or flight part, none of that is going to work.
Yeah.
So what we've got with COVID is just what you described. Parents now are called upon to do stuff they've never done before.
Yeah.
Even with simple math. I mean, you were a teacher.
Oh my gosh.
Why does math change every 5 years?
It's second grade math and I'm like losing my mind. Yeah.
Plato was doing the same math that, for hundreds of years, math stayed the same. Like what in the world? And so all of that puts, and when we as people feel like we're not in control and we don't have the answers and we're not able to deal with the demands, it's full panic. And so this is what's taking a toll on parents, families, individuals who are already battling sadness, grief, loss, loneliness. It's a whole new world now with the level of pressure because we're being called upon to do things, like in my field, everyone said, oh, well, we can do virtual sessions. Well, that sounds easy. Until you try to do a group with, 5 or 6 little people, who, or individuals who want to come see you and you're not available. And it's exhausting. It's just, and on paper, virtual session, but and so you've done the e-learning thing and, God bless our teachers. God bless our school officials. I have my sister-in-law as a dean. I don't know how she has hair left. I mean, what she's facing every day and the challenges and along with the regular stuff. So,
well, it just seems like after what you've explained, like our, the danger part of our brains is just, it feels like that's the only part that's working right now, that everything else has been shut down. And that's really the only part that's taking over. So I guess my question is, and seriously, back to that school thing real fast. I just saw this, but when everybody was trying to figure out what they were going to do, obviously I was like, please take my children back. But at the same point, what I've tried to explain to people is you don't want to be on the decision-making end of anything like this. Our church, we waited probably we were one of the last churches to re-enter in our area. In fact, I think we were the last church to re-enter. And I know some of our people had some trouble with that and didn't understand it. And one of the things I tried to explain is you have to realize we're making decisions for thousands of people. And we've got people's lives in our hands. And same thing with these schools. It's not just the kids, it's the teachers, it's the custodial staff. these people who are in leadership positions, they are having to think through every little detail of how to keep people safe. And then they're having to deal with everyone who agrees and disagrees. Like, you don't want that position. You don't want to be making those decisions. But yeah, so God bless them. But I guess my next question is, okay, how do we get the back of our brains to slow down then? Like, how do we create, and you kind of mentioned it, being in the moment. And I know some people are going to be like, that just seems too easy. And, real life says, yes, I can be in this moment, but, like, I'm going to have to go get my kids in an hour and a half, and I'm going to have to make dinner. So I can be in this moment, but there's still other things that I'm going to have to deal with and take care of. So how do we get, that danger system in our brains to slow down enough so that we can reassure ourselves we are safe, so that we can, try to begin to establish a new normal for ourselves? I mean, I think we've been doing that, but how do we go about just calming ourselves down so we can embrace the moment?
Yeah, great question. And, this is all throughout scripture. This is all throughout, even other religions emphasize, the power of being present in the moment. That beautiful verse where God says, my grace is sufficient for you.
Yes.
His grace is sufficient right here, right now. It's not sufficient for me to go then, panic about the future and have shame and guilt about the past.
Yeah.
I won't feel it. It's in the moment. So using our senses. So using those of you that have done yoga, those of you that have tried, meditation, there's a process to relaxing yourself that uses your 5 senses, vision, hearing, and touch, especially.
Yeah.
Focusing on, what do my feet feel like sitting in this chair? What does my back feel like up against, the back of the chair?
Yeah.
Relaxing my facial muscles. What? I never thought of that.
Yeah.
And so using our senses to really notice, what do I hear? What do I see around me? What do I feel? What do I smell? And then using our breath. The breath work is a key component of relaxation because it's tied to the sympathetic nervous system and the activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is that beautiful system when all is functioning well. When I'm in that space of safety, that's when the right side of my brain can wake up to create. That's when my frontal lobes are processing. When I feel good, I'm in that parasympathetic space. And so what triggers getting out of fight or flight is regulatory breathing. So deep breaths in, holding for a few seconds, and then release.
Yeah, I already feel better.
Breath in. And this is known as square breathing. If you go to YouTube and you just type in square breathing, by the way, parents, there's videos for kids. I think one of the most important pieces of parenting today is to teach our children to relax and be in the moment. And it has nothing to do with throwing away all their electronics and getting rid of video games. And, it's just simple teaching them how to ground themselves and get regulated. We know from the data of not just suicide, but destructive self-soothing. So addictions, whether it's food, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, the key component is people who cannot tolerate unpleasant emotions and who have no ability to get present and be relaxed in the moment. Because if I let myself panic about the future, then I'm pulled to the abyss where there's no grounding. And if I think of the shame and guilt, regret of the past, I'm pulled to the past where I have no business. I can't affect any change back there. But what I can do is, in this moment, I can love people, I can love myself. And, Romans 8:26 and 27. Everybody knows Romans 8:28. Hardly anybody calls to mind 26 and 27, which is, the Holy Spirit is in our hearts, and it's taking our groans, it's taking our fears, things
Yeah.
that we can't even express, and carrying them to the Father. And then the Father comes down and searches our hearts. That's why
Mhm.
8:28 gives the punch
Yeah.
to all things work together. But I can't rely on, tap into, or be mindful of the Holy Spirit unless I'm present.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this is why Christians value worship so much in the
Mm.
church, because
Yes.
it forces you, the decibels, the visuals, it forces you to be in that space of being
Yeah.
present. But isn't it sad that it takes that to get us there?
Yeah. Yep.
And so, and like I tell people in my office, if you do nothing, nothing will happen.
Yeah.
This requires mindfulness of, and being intentional of getting myself relaxed and throughout the day, because guess what? As I'm driving, someone cut me off,
Yeah.
or, oh my gosh, my kid's teacher's calling. I wonder what happened now. We're
Yeah.
constantly pulled.
Yeah.
So there's no magic pill of relaxation. It's
Yeah.
something that I then have to redo, reground myself, and get centered. So that's the first part of that. The
Okay.
other is perspective. So visualizing above all,
Yeah.
and this is where our faith is key. And I get frustrated because, to me, Christians should be leading the way
Oh, yeah.
in good
Preach.
living, not preaching at people, but living
Yeah.
and modeling.
Oh, I'm saying you preach. I'm saying you need to
Yes,
preach. Yes. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
By showing, because man, if you can't see that our world needs God right
Yeah.
now, if this isn't a picture of how humanism, secular thought, and just, most people are good, they'll figure it out, really, you know
Yeah.
um
Yeah. Yeah.
so so we should be leading the way. But our perspective is so key, because again, remember, our brain works in pictures. So
Yeah.
if I'm visualizing disaster, if Trump gets elected, it's going to be terrible. If Biden gets elected, no, but perspective of God's in control.
Mm.
Even if I don't feel in
Yeah.
control, I'm safe in this moment. I'm
Yeah.
grounded here. And then what's next? The next part of perspective is eliminating those things that impact our sense of safety.
Hmm.
So we touched on technology, you
Yeah.
know, um, limiting what I read, limiting what I see,
Yeah.
um, plugging in things like humor, things
Yeah.
like music. And some people will say, oh, you're just avoiding the truth. And I'm saying, not at all. I'm
Yeah.
interacting with the world around me in the way that I choose to
Yeah.
interact with.
Yes.
I had
Yes.
a little guy at my office the other day. This really brings it home.
Yeah.
He said, I wish it was the way it was in the 80s. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, you could go outside then. And I said, well, you can go outside now. He
Yeah.
said, no, because of global warming, the temperatures now are way hotter and it's more dangerous. And
Oh,
so we pulled up almanacs
yeah.
from weather from 30 years ago,
Yeah.
35 years ago, and looked at temperatures. And he's like, oh, there were hot days. I
Yeah.
said, yeah.
Yeah.
And and then the whole thing about safety, I said, well, when I rode my bike 15 miles from home at 12 years old, I didn't even have a phone. My chain popped
Or
off
a
and I
helmet,
had to,
probably. Did you wear a
no,
helmet?
there were no
Yeah.
helmets. You didn't wear
Yeah.
seatbelts in cars.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were like free range chickens.
Yes.
And so you're actually safer now. But overall, and make a long story short, his perspective was that now there's nothing but danger. There's
Hmm.
nothing but, you can't even go outside because you'll get burned up by the sun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so our kids are really affected by, they don't have the filters we do.
Hmm.
They get these snippets, and everything on the news is danger and it's
Yeah.
bad. So, I have a choice over what
Yeah.
I let into my reading space, into what I see.
Yeah.
And so that's a way to tap into gaining that sense of control.
Yeah.
It's not detaching from, it's actually choosing to keep my energy
Yes.
around certain things. And then when I notice that I'm present, that's when I can connect with my children. I
Yeah.
can connect with my spouse, my friends, and that there's a sense of control over the situation.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's so like, I know for myself, even as, because one of my things is when I'm battling my anxiety, I'm running around from thing to thing and like a chicken with my head cut off, and I'm draining my energy even more. And so I think one of the things in the beginning of this whole situation with COVID is Bryant and I actually sat down and were like, okay, what can we cut out of our lives right now? Because, and this was like probably the last question I want to ask you, but our emotional margin, and you taught me this, like normal emotional margins this much. And then when you're going through a stressful situation, it comes down even more. So you have very less reactionary room. And so we started kind of cutting things out of our lives. And then I started introducing into my life things that would keep me grounded to the moment, because that's something you taught me years ago. So for instance, like working out has been so good for me, because when you work out, you're so focused on the exercise and really like breathing that your mind can't wander. And so working out's been really good for me. Something else that I've started during COVID was cooking. I was a terrible, terrible cook, and restaurants shut down. So there was Uber Eats, but that gets expensive. So I've had to teach myself how to cook. And I've found out like I have really started enjoying cooking and baking for my family. And again, that's something where I have to be all in, or if you get the recipe wrong, there's dinner, there goes. So I think, just what you were saying, and then humor, my humor specifically, I was thinking about this. I know it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but after Eric committed suicide, one of the things that I've done to be able to cope with that is I joke about it, not because I think suicide is funny, but because it helps me understand, like it helps me process the trauma, and it helps me, I don't joke about it, I guess, but I probably make inappropriate lines about it just because it helps me process and not get sucked into the abyss of the despair of it all, So that's so interesting. Okay, so I guess that would be, and we probably touched on this, but Bryant had heard about this article. I need to find it. It was something called like the Surge or the Surge story or something, but basically the gist of the article, he had heard about it when he went to his conference last week, that basically they didn't explain it this way, but when he was explaining it to me, I was like, this is what Kevin teaches. Our emotional margin's this much, it's gone down to here. Now, what's happening is in our culture with all these race issues, political issues, everything else, people are flying off the handle probably more than normal, just because there's been race issues in our country for how long, right? And then, Trump's been our president for 4 years. We made it out alive. Biden was our vice president. We made it out of that time alive. So regardless of which side you fall on, like if they get into power, we're going to be all right, But for whatever reason, people can't, and I've seen it on Facebook. I mean, I've put up a couple of different things about, race issues. Brian and I try to not wade into the political thing because that's just too much. But some people have gotten really nasty towards Bryant and I about race issues or about certain messages or series Bryant preaches. I mean, people are, we've always gotten the emails, we've always gotten those things, but people have gotten really, really nasty, and people that would surprise you. So does that have to do with the fact that we just don't have a lot of margin? So things that wouldn't necessarily have caused us to, we should be worked up about race. We should be worked up about those things. But the level of hatred, the level of nastiness, is that amplified because we just don't have that much emotional margin?
Right. We've lost the shock absorbers.
Yeah.
And again, too much information with nowhere to process it leaves us reactive. So one of the things that we get our sense of safety from is being able to predict, like I mentioned.
Yeah.
And when it comes to people, if we know, if they're familiar to us, then we are less on guard with them.
Yeah.
So what the influx of news has done, and this information through technology, it's made everyone question And if you notice, it polarizes. You're
Yes.
either one side or the other. Like
Yes.
Wendy read something the other day on Facebook. It said, if you have an American flag in your front yard, people will know who you're voting for.
What?
And, you know, it's like, wow, like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
simple things. And
Yeah.
yet, if you notice, for those of you that have had these opportunities, whether it's with, you know, someone from another race or another belief system, when it's just you and them, maybe you're
Yes.
waiting in line somewhere, you can have a nice conversation. Like
Yes.
nobody got mad.
Yeah.
Nobody blew up, you
Yeah.
know? And so
Yeah.
it's like, huh. And so the being forced to pick a side
Yes.
is something that's new for our culture. And so even in that, parents can train their children, get the information first, wait, you know,
Yeah.
don't think you know everything about somebody just because who they're going to vote for.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so, but yeah, that's another aspect of, again, I'm not a technology hater. I love it. I use
Yeah.
it. I wrote my doctoral dissertation on using video games as a play therapy tool with kids.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's great.
Yeah.
But unlimited, and without filtering,
Yeah.
it can really change the overall community thinking, you know, and cause reactivity in people.
Yeah. Yeah. That's,
So
yeah.
limiting it is been shown to reduce stress.
Yeah.
So, you know, because the thing about it is brain fatigue. When you're, you know, our brains were designed not for the world we live in. Our brains were designed for, there's a problem, a challenge. We either overcome it or we get help.
Yeah.
You know, we rely on our clan.
Yeah.
And then we rest. And then when we're hungry, we gather and get food. And then
Yeah.
we eat and then we rest. And then we make ourselves safe and then we sleep.
Yeah.
And then we get up and we get food and
Yeah.
we stay safe. You know, if you look at what happens with the constant bombardment, like even just scrolling through Instagram, as you're doing that, your mental and emotional energy is getting drained while that's happening. If you notice, if you're on the computer a lot, there's brain fatigue. And what that's related to is less dopamine, less serotonin.
Yeah.
And we're not meant to do anything for long periods of time.
Yeah.
It drains us.
Yeah.
And the other key component of shutdown is the isolation part. And that's connected to the suicides that we're seeing.
Yeah.
People are isolated and alone. And, you know, as much as part of me is an introvert, I like being alone.
Yeah.
But we are community creatures. We are built and designed to be in community.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that's what's been so heartbreaking. I mean, I've heard story after story, just even I'm the worship pastor, and like there's been about 2 or 3 of my worship team members who have lost friends to suicide just in the past couple of months. And then I had another friend reach out to me because her brother found his best friend dead when he walked into his house. I mean, it's so we'll end with this question. And this was one of the last questions I sent you, is like, what do we do with the fear that we can't keep our loved ones safe? So whether that's because of COVID, whether that's because, you know, I mean, Bryant and I right now are having so many people reach out to us because they're walking with people who are suicidal and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to help them. And so then what's happening is, and this is something that you and I spent a lot of time talking about when my brother was still alive, they're helping people to the expense of themselves. And that ends up not helping people, you know? So what do we do to care for our loved ones to, you know, and what do we do with this fear of, and I know you're going to say this, like, we're not in control, but how do we tell ourselves that? Because we're Americans, we think we're in control of everything, right? So absolutely. I guess just how do we go about loving on people that we know need loved on, keeping our kids safe? You know, I'm giving my kids vitamins every morning and stuff, but then that just pervading feel of like, if I don't do enough, something's going to go wrong, something's going to happen. So what do we do with that fear?
Great question. I think that's the number one thing.
Yeah.
And it's, the answer is multifaceted. I love the name of your podcast, the scars thing. And I'm
Yeah.
mindful of periods in my life that I went through that left some scars. And the
Yeah.
theme of those times were exactly what we're talking about. There was situations where I couldn't do anything. And I think that's the epitome of terror and fear
Yeah.
for us as human beings. You know, most people, their fear of death is really, it's not death.
Yeah.
It's the situation where I can't do anything.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
so tapping into what we know, one is visualization. So as Christians, you know, this is where prayer, my prayer life became really strong because of the dark night of the soul that I was
Yeah.
in, where
Yeah.
I had no options other
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
prayer. And so, and I hate to even bring it up because it sounds so trite, and yet it's commanded in scripture. It's the lifeblood of the Christian. And so that prayer piece, and what I would, you know, coach people to do is to, when you pray, visualize. If you've never read Isaiah 6,
Yeah.
you know, visualizing God in his temple on the throne, and just power times a billion.
Yeah. Yeah.
That we can't even grasp. And that
Yeah.
there's a perspective. And this is why Jesus mentioned, be little children. You know, what do little kids do? When you're 5, do you know anything about taxes and property payments and, you know,
Yeah.
the
No.
bills? And no, food just shows up, and
Yeah.
my clothes are there, and I
Yeah.
don't even see mom doing laundry. It just gets done,
Yeah.
you know, and you just hold God's hand and walk along, that I know I'm going to be okay. And so there's also, what throws us off is feelings. You know, there's my frontal brain knows something, but
Yeah.
when I feel sadness or fear or frustration,
Yeah.
that blows it all out of the way.
Yeah.
And so being able to ground yourself with the fear and look at the fear and say, okay, let's say the worst thing happens. My kid gets sick. Well, I'll call the doctor. And then
Yeah.
what? I'll get the prescription from the pharmacy.
Yeah.
They've been sick before. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
take what your fear is and push through it. Now,
Yeah.
some of that can be morbid, like
Yeah.
the fear of, what if my loved one does follow through with suicide? What will I
Yeah.
do? Well, that's between them and God.
Yeah. Well, I remember you and I had to talk about that. I remember before
Yes.
Eric died that fall, I just had this pervading sense that something was going to happen. And so it was something that I would come in and say, like, what if he does this? And you said, what if he does? And we had to talk through that. It wouldn't be my fault. And so it was almost as though I was, you know, what we had done the preparatory work for me to have walked through that by facing it down, you know. But yeah, I remember us working through that together.
Yeah. And so, you know, the theme there is not imagining the worst to panic more, but to see that it's really out of my hands, and accepting that then allows us to trust God more. And then we have energy to reach out. A lot of people, if you notice, and this happens for myself, I'll feel the urge to reach out, but then I almost don't want to, because what if it's bad news?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And so, but when I'm grounded to the fact that it's really out of my control anyway,
Yeah.
but I can reach out, then I have energy and motivation to do so. You know, I think of Moses often. He knew he was the person to help the Israelites out of Egypt.
Yeah.
But he wasn't ready. When he did it his way, he killed somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
God said, I'm going to put you in the desert for 40 years.
Yep.
Until you're ready.
Yep.
And then you'll be ready.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How do we do with waiting?
Yeah. Terrible.
No.
We're awful. Yeah.
You know, if there's 8 cars in the Chick-fil-A line, people, oh my gosh, you know.
Yeah, I know.
How dare they be here
I'm
when
being
I'm here?
persecuted. This is American suffering. Yeah.
So recognizing that what is our true calling and our true purpose? It's to spend eternity with God, and God's refining process is to eliminate any connection to things here on earth. So as I grow, I should be feeling more patient. I should have more focus on important things like relationships and not stuff that I want to own and collect.
Yeah.
And so that's the idea. So when we frame a suffering situation, like a family member that, I mean, Wendy and I, have gone through this. I think it's part of just being human.
Yeah.
But a suffering situation means I'm humbled, I'm put on my knees, and reach out where I can. If it's a text, if it's a letter, if it's, some way of just releasing it to God, but then, reaching out in the way that I can.
Yeah.
But ultimately it's acceptance. And that's a process. So for people who are in that right now, don't feel guilty if you're not there. Don't beat yourself up. Just simply get in the moment, start over, get back on the horse, as they say.
Yeah.
And all you can do is all you can do.
Yeah.
And so, it's really about managing stress. It's not trying to get rid of it.
I love it. I think this is going to be so helpful. It's been good for me just to kind of go back over some things, because I know these are themes that you and I have been talking about for 10 years, but sometimes it takes hearing it several times to process through. And so I'm so glad this will be airing on Monday, but then it'll be available for people to access, because I'm going to have to probably go back through this again to make sure I've got it all. But Kevin, thank you so much. And one of the reasons why I so appreciate what you do is because, yes, you love Jesus, and you know scripture so well, but you've also studied the brain, you've studied the emotions. And that's one thing I talk to people a lot about. Is like, when you're getting into counseling, you've got to find both, because it's not enough just to slap scripture onto things. Like one of the very first scar stories we did was with my friend Lauren, who got burned terribly by the church because she had some major diagnosable anxiety that she was on medication for. And they said, Philippians 4:6, cast your anxiety on him, for he cares for you. So she did that. They said she was healed. She got off all her medication and then had a huge mental emotional breakdown. And so what I love that Kevin does is he knows the brain, he knows the emotions, so he can explain our physiological reactions, what's happening inside, so that we can figure out what's happening and that we can stop it and rewire it and put some healthy practices into place. So Kevin, thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome. Make sure you guys are commenting and sharing, because we'd love to know how you related to this podcast. But that's all we've got time for today. So Kevin, thanks again. And thanks again for joining us today, you guys.
All right. Thank you, Nicole.